Welcome to the Action Network podcast. I am your host, Director of Research here at the Action Network, Evan Abrams, and I am joined, as always, on the best episodes, on the recap episodes, Brandon Anderson. How's it going? Talk to me. Vikings. I know you're a fan. 13-2. We're going to get into that, but what's your thoughts going into the week?
Man, another great Vikings win. I'm here back in the dungeon. The people know who have been following this podcast for a while. When I return home to North Dakota with the family for the holidays, here I am in the dungeon background with the limited internet connection. But this is a Vikings fan home, Vikings fan state. Big win for the Vikings today. Really probably the best game of the day. Just back and forth. Really fun one. Not a great slate, but some fun games. So I'm excited to talk about these today.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, now that we have all these Wednesdays and Saturdays and NFL kind of just like fills up every slot, I feel like today, like next weekend, Sunday is very light because of all the Saturdays and things going on. So there was some fun games and there was a lot of stories about road favorites, but we'll see how that goes. But we're going to start kind of probably with the best game of the day, at least with probably the biggest storyline would be Philly at Washington. So Washington comes back to shock Philly, I guess. I mean, Kenny Pickett in the lineup, 36-33, covering the +4, and the total goes over 47. I mean, my note here is simple before I toss it to you. Hurts gets concussed. Washington stays alive, I guess, barely in the NFC East, considering that Washington has Atlanta and Dallas, and Philly is at home against Dallas and is it the Giants?
Giants.
Give that up. It's the Giants.
Finale. Yeah.
So you figure they're going to grab one of those, but I mean, aside from that, it's probably Hurts. So what do you think here?
Yeah, Washington would have to go win out and have Philly lose out. Now, if they did, Washington suddenly is the 2 seed and Philadelphia drops all the way to the 6 seed. So unlikely. It's in play. The real story is that the 1 seed is probably not Philly anymore. I think they're down to something like 5% on the 1 seed. Looks like it's just that NFC North champion now. So I'll talk about that in a second. First quarter, we know this about the Eagles, that they have been struggling in the first quarter all season, right? Up before last week, they had scored 17 points in the first quarter through 13 games. They had 10 against Pittsburgh. They had 21 today. It's like, oh, this game is cooked. Philadelphia is destroying Washington. Even after Jalen Hurts went out, they get another touchdown. They're up 21-7 end of the quarter. Seems like they're rolling 27-14 into the fourth quarter. Look, no Jalen Hurts. They obviously need him healthy. You can have your opinion on Jalen Hurts, but we know what you think about Kenny Pickett. Kenny Pickett's not any good. So I can't really fault you for losing a game that, frankly, Kenny Pickett played 3.5 quarters of this game. Jalen Hurts went out during the second touchdown drive. But to me, the story is not Kenny Pickett, even though the story has to be Jalen Hurts, of course, because quarterbacks.
Yeah.
This defense, the defense that we've been saying is so good. Number 1 against the run, number 1 against the pass. They had not lost since the bye week. The defense was carrying. That defense made plays. They did force 5 turnovers here, but they also gave up 5 passing touchdowns to Jaden Daniels. Even after all that, the Commanders take the lead. The Eagles get it back. I thought we were going to get the hot read cover even in here on the Eagles -2.5. They got the lead. All they have to do is make a defensive stop. And this defense that had been so good so much of the season just couldn't make a stop today. Offensive Rookie of the Year is over. Jaden Daniels is that dude. I don't know that it was ever not over. I think it was one of those where we had to talk about it for a while sort of things. Washington couldn't run the ball at all. Brian Robinson, 10 carries for 24 yards, and he lost 2 fumbles. This is all Jaden Daniels. A rookie going on the road to Philadelphia, to the number 1 defense, and doing everything. 5 touchdowns is a crazy performance to come back from 5 turnovers down. Philadelphia's offense, not great. A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith had all but 1 of the completions and all but 2 of the targets. That's just not going to cut it. You got to have a better plan than that. And again, it's your backup quarterback. But the defense gives up 22 points in the fourth quarter to Washington. You can't do that. To me, this is a loss for Philadelphia that is understandable in the moment, but that's going to have, it's going to reverberate through the playoffs because they're probably out of the 1 seed now. They're going to still win the division in all likelihood, but you probably can't rest Jalen Hurts because you still have to get across the line in the division, get that home game, keep your possibility alive for the 1 seed. And now you're not hosting that game in the NFC Championship. Now you're going to Detroit, where we know how good Jared Goff has been indoors with the Lions, or to Minnesota, loud stadium that has one of the best home field advantages still in football. That's a huge swing. This is a loss for Philadelphia that's going to really matter come playoff time.
Definitely a terrible loss, and obviously Hurts is the main story. But I still feel like the pass defense, the good rush, the offense being beat in a single game format, they're going to be a tough out, I think, no matter what. But obviously, looking at the field and being like, oh, maybe they could have kept pace for the, the 1 seed or whatever, completely understandable. Okay, let's kind of keep moving here. Minnesota at Seattle. So Minnesota wins the game 27-24. They cover the 2.5 point spread on the road. Total goes over 43. I mean, yeah, Philly and Washington kind of had the storylines, but to me, was it? And this was my first note: is this the most entertaining game of the day? Question mark. Because really, you had tons of offense. There was passing all over the place. I mean, Minnesota's won 8 in a row now. Their last 6 games, Sam Darnold, 15 touchdowns, 1 interception. And honestly, not the worst defenses during that streak. Seattle, Chicago, Arizona, Tennessee. So I keep looking at like the statistics week in and week out and seeing Sam Darnold's name at the top of that list. And listen, we get it. Minnesota also blew a 17-7 lead in this game. Seattle led for the first time late 24-20. But Darnold right away replies. 4 plays, 70 yards, goes to Jefferson, and Flores' defense closes the door. I think the mixture between, let's say, Darnold not turning it over like maybe we're used to, and how dangerous Minnesota's defense is with Flores, I think it's relatively dangerous. And obviously, I mean, they've won 13 games at this point. But very, very crazy. And if anyone watching the game at the end, Gino's visibly very upset because it looked like there was a mistimed route with Metcalf, which you could say cost them. They were, in their own territory. It was still a long way to go. But obviously some miscommunication there. There's some anger there. Obviously, Seattle kind of blows an opportunity, especially with the fact that the Rams get the win. And we could talk about that again in a second. 2 stats I just found kind of wild because I wanted to put Sam Darnold's season in some context here. So 32 passing touchdowns, and he had 27 passing touchdowns the previous 4 seasons with San Francisco, Carolina, and the Jets. But not even thinking about this, like a little bit of a pedigree talk here. So top 5 picks with 35 passing touchdowns and 4,000 yards to make the playoffs, which pretty much he's on route. He's about 250 away from getting to that mark with 3 touchdowns over the last 2 games. It would be Burrow, Stafford, Luck, Matt Ryan, Carson Palmer, Peyton Manning, Steve Young. I mean, it's really not a bad list for what we kind of threw and discarded this quarterback away. I'm impressed. And he may not win an award, but they've won 13 games. They're 6.5 games above their win total. Just impressive stuff from me.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy because we've talked about this a few other times, had we not changed the rules because of Joe Flacco, I think Sam Darnold would be like minus 10,000 to be comeback player of the year right now. Like that
he
is
should
who
be
we've given this award to. And here's another crazy thing. I know I got the Vikings jersey on. If you change Sam Darnold's name to just some other not Sam Darnold, and then the Vikings beat the Packers next week, and then beat the Lions in week 18 to go 15-2 as the NFC 1 seed, that player is the MVP in the NFL. I don't think it's going to happen for Sam Darnold. I'm not telling you to bet it. I don't think we can quite get there because it's like, come on, Sam Darnold's the MVP? Too many people will think that way. Dude's making throws. And look, Justin Jefferson's making the catches.
He's 100 to 1 right now. He's 100 to 1. I mean,
well, if you want to nibble it, I'm just saying, quarterback of the 1 seed, you could do much worse than betting the quarterback of the 1 seed. Like, that is who we give the MVP to, whatever happens. I saw another crazy stat for you. Justin Jefferson has now the 7th most yards all time through 6 seasons in the NFL. And it's like Randy Moss, number 1, Jerry Rice, Torrey Holt, Calvin Johnson, like all-time great receivers. Justin Jefferson is 7th all-time through 6 seasons. Here's the crazy part. This is his 5th season. He still has an entire other season to move up that list. He was so good today. He had the winning touchdown. It was back and forth all game long. Really entertaining. Kind of a weird spot for me because, of course, the fan in me is on Minnesota, but we've been on Seattle Island a lot. I've been backing them. I've got a lot of futures on them. Not great for Seattle, We're going to get to Arizona and we'll get to the Rams in a little bit. The Rams more or less control their destiny at this point. In fact, we've talked about that Seahawks-Rams Week 18 game. There's a pretty good chance that the Rams may not even need that game if they just win Saturday night against the Rams. Now, in LA, we might not even get that game in Week 18 with the Seattle loss.
Yeah, honestly, by the time we get to that point, depending on what the standings look like, it's still in the air at the moment, but still pretty crazy to even think that Seattle's gotten them into this place. Especially, I think they're like 2-7 against the spread at home and just haven't played well. So very frustrating there. All right, let's keep going here. Arizona at Carolina. I mean, off the bat here, Carolina does get the upset. It was a wild one because there was a moment there because if you had Arizona -5.5, there was a chance you could have potentially covered in overtime, but they do get the upset 36-30 in OT, covering the 5.5 point spread as a dog. Total goes over 47. I keep kind of repeating this one before I toss it to you, but Kyler has now started 39 games where his team is 500 or better. Arizona's 17-22 ATS in those games. When it's in November or later, 7-15 ATS. I feel like we always tend to get to this point with them, and there's always a reason why they can't get it done in December. But that's kind of where we end up right now.
Yeah, I think the reason is that Call of Duty comes out in November. I think maybe that's the reason, as we've discovered. Yeah, Arizona officially eliminated from the playoffs with this overtime loss. They fought all the way here. Carolina was up 20-10. Carolina was up 30-20. Arizona fights back. They force it to overtime, and credit where it's due. Jonathan Gannon, my man, I did the math on this. I think I was right that a tie was basically a loss for the Cardinals. So the Cardinals get in overtime. They got fourth down inside their own 20, and they decide to go for it. If you don't get that, like, you might get fired, because if you don't pick that up, you are gifting them a field goal. You are losing the game if you don't get that fourth down conversion. You got to go get the win. They had to have the win here. Got to beat Carolina if you want to have a playoff shot. They did get it, but then I think they didn't pick up another first down. Carolina gets the ball back. Chuba Hubbard, another huge day for him. 152 yards, 2 touchdowns with the walk-off winner. To me, the story here, beyond just the Cardinals getting eliminated, 2 quarterbacks that I think we have to think a lot differently about than we did like 2 months ago. Kyler Murray, as you said, just not good enough here. Lost a fumble. He had a bad interception. He keeps doing that where it's like third down, he scrambles around, he tries to make a play, and it's just not there, and he throws it right to the defender. He took 3 sacks. He's just not good enough. He's not making the plays. On the flip side, Bryce Young looking pretty good in this game. Bryce Young looking pretty good over the last month. He's making some plays. He had a 23-yard touchdown run and another 34-yard run. I didn't have that on my bingo card. Bryce Young's a runner now. I didn't know that was happening. I gotta say, Panthers Island, I don't know if we were wrong. This may be like 2 months early. We might have to be back on Panthers Island next year. Bryce Young looking like a guy that is going to be the opening day starter next year. Kyler Murray looking like a guy that I don't know how far ahead of Bryce Young he should be in the quarterback rankings at this point.
If they just would have benched Andy Dalton sooner, we would have gotten this version of Bryce Young sooner, and maybe something would have been different. Carolina
They didn't
even
bench Andy Dalton. He got in a car accident, hurt his thumb. They got lucky. They might have just traded Bryce Young away if not for Andy Dalton hurting his thumb.
That is a fair assessment given the franchise's history. They are 6-1 against the spread in their last 7 games, though. So in that underdog role, tend to cover. And Bryce seems he has some control of the offense, which we definitely wouldn't have said earlier in the year. All right, I'm going to give you one big stat. It's really 2 right now. I'll do quickly before we kind of get to the best of the rest. But I didn't put this at the Philly and Washington game at the top because I kind of wanted to bring it on its own. Commanders turn it over 5 times and trailed by 14 plus points in this game and ended up winning. Teams in that spot were 3-201 straight up over the last 20 years. And of those, only 6 had covered the spread even in those games. So just a wild comeback. And obviously there's a lot of nuances, right? The 5 touchdowns as well from Jaden. So it kind of goes both ways. But so much to go, not your direction, and to get back into the game and win it with the injury to Hurts, crazy. And we had mentioned this on other pods, and this is just the way it went today. So I didn't actually see what happened at the second half on Sunday night, but entering Sunday Night Football, teams who led at the half were 5-9 second half ATS in Week 16. 16-33 now since week 13. So that tends to continue where those teams are not holding leads well, and those second half spreads are going to the team trailing, which is interesting. All right, we are going to go now to the best of the rest. Just going to talk about the 2 Saturday games before we go back to the Sunday slate. And we're just going to go basically playoff scenario, anything important we had there. So we'll start with Houston and Kansas City. So KC finally gets the cover. 17, I believe it's 27-17, was it? I think it's 3.5 point favorites.
27-19.
That's what I had written down. 27-19. As 3.5 point favorites, total goes over 43. Only a few quick notes before I toss it to you. The Tank Dell injury, something that can't be forgotten because it impacts Houston the rest of the year, assuming he's probably going to be out for a little while. Kansas City, I honestly think at this point, getting back Hollywood and seeing their offense like run for a game probably has more offense than we think, more weapons. Like with all normal circumstances, the KC offense that we knew post Tyreek, they seem like they do have more options now with Worthy and both running backs. So that was something I noted. And KC again this week on a short week again against Pittsburgh. They play on Christmas. The interesting thing from Houston's point of view is they probably, and you have this more locked in than I do, but I believe they have Baltimore kind of locked in as a 4-5 in the playoffs. Aren't they? It seems like they're going to play 2 times in 3 or 4 weeks here, right?
I mean, yes and no. I think Houston is effectively locked into the 4 seed, so I did have that note. It may not necessarily be Baltimore. Baltimore could still be the division.
That's fair.
It could end up being the Chargers, so the opponent may not necessarily be there. You're right. Houston doesn't necessarily have a lot to play for now, which I think you got to keep in mind with that Christmas Day game. Now, look, it's Christmas Day. That's a good thing to play for. You want to show up for the home fans on Christmas. Like, just that alone, we know how teams, show up on Thanksgiving for those games. I thought, we talked about this before with the Texans. I thought this felt very much like the opening playoff game on a Saturday early in the day. This felt exactly like that, which is not great for the Chiefs. It's fine the Texans can feel that way. Not great that that's how I feel about the Chiefs at this point. In fact, I had in my notes, I think the Chiefs are ball control offense now. I was trying to think, what team does this remind me of? And I realized it. They remind me of the Chiefs before Patrick Mahomes. I think the Alex Smith era is back in Kansas City. We're running the ball and playing defense and just kind of controlling games. The Tank Dell injury definitely felt like the pivot point in this game. Houston effectively ties the game up, except they didn't. They got what would have been the tying touchdown plus extra point. Gruesome knee injury. He's probably going to miss all of next season now, too. Clearly impacted the team emotionally. They missed the extra point, so they don't tie it up. They're still down a point. And it just felt like emotionally that they never quite recovered again. And again, we had Baltimore minus 2.5 on the hot rate. It's already 3.5 or 4 for Christmas Day. Houston, to me, on a short turnaround, I know it's that Christmas Day game, but to turn around emotionally after that sort of a gut punch, losing a guy like that after he fought so hard to come back on a short turnaround, I don't know if I love that for them. Chiefs 14-1, all but clinch the 1 seed at this point. Buffalo would have to win out and have the Chiefs lose out. The Steelers had been a threat, but they were not at the next game we're about to talk about. That also is pretty important news for Denver, because Denver plays the Chiefs in Week 18. If the Chiefs win on Christmas, or if the Bills lose next week, the Chiefs are already clinched on the 1 seed. That's great for Denver, who would love to face not Patrick Mahomes and not some of those other starters and get more of an easy win. It's not great for us looking for the long shots in the AFC, who are hoping Denver stumbles because they're probably the most likely candidate at this point. So that's sort of where the playoff picture hit on that one.
And for what it's worth, Buffalo minus 9.5 at home against the Jets. And we assume still Aaron Rodgers and the whole Green Army will show up there. Pittsburgh, Baltimore, we could do this quickly. Baltimore wins 34-17 as 7-point favorites. Total goes over 44. I mean, my notes are quickly. Lamar buries the ghosts for now. It's his first cover versus Pittsburgh. He does have 3 touchdowns and an interception. Not too shabby. The most interesting thing for Pittsburgh, so they've lost 2 straight now, Philly and Baltimore. They've got Kansas City on deck. Pittsburgh has turned it over at least once in 8 straight games, which is so un-Tomlin in usually the way that they play. And good defense, no turnovers, figure out a way to win. That's just a tough thing to overcome on a consistent basis. And I found this kind of interesting. So Pittsburgh has only lost 2 straight with a 66% plus win percentage under Tomlin once. So they've only done that once, 2020, and they ended up losing in the wild card round to Cleveland. So the question is what Pittsburgh. I liked Pittsburgh, and I know we talked about this, I believe, on the Best Bets episode. I think they offered some value because I felt it was a safer offense with Russ. Well, that's not what really turned up here in this Baltimore game, which is a little worrisome.
Yeah, it sort of felt like, normally in this Steelers-Ravens game, we've learned to expect the Mike Tomlin voodoo. Sort of felt like the Ravens got the Tomlin voodoo this time, right? We had early in the game, right before halftime, I think Russell Wilson goes on a long run down inside the 5 and then gets the fumble popped out, and they lose the ball there. So that's 3 or maybe 7 points off the board, possibly a lead there, and that changes how the game plays out. Then later in the game, you mentioned Lamar had the one interception. Another really bad interception in the red zone. The Ravens are driving, looking to kind of put the game away. They barely get in there, and Lamar throws a bad pass, intercepted. But like a play or two after that, Russ gives it right back on the pick six. Just a bad play. It was all on him, his mistake. Pick six. I had the under and I had Steelers, and that one play just like shot both of those out the window. 17-17 at that point, Baltimore pulls away and goes 17-0 after that. Now look, the Ravens were the better team. The stats are better for the Ravens. They usually are in this matchup. Just that if the Tomlin voodoo goes the other way as well, it's not going to go that well. Derrick Henry looked awesome in this game, ran really well for them. The Ravens definitely were the deserving winners. They just didn't have the typical Steelers-Ravens voodoo to it. And also, I don't know that I can take too much away from Pittsburgh. Still no George Pickens, the one offensive weapon that they clearly need to have. And for most of the game, not 3 of their top 4 corners, who aren't that good anyways, but you definitely don't want to be missing 3 of your top 4 guys. Pittsburgh does still control their destiny. These teams are tied now, but if Pittsburgh wins out, they will be the division champion. However, you mentioned Christmas, Pittsburgh, Kansas City, then it's Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, who might be playing basically a playoff game at that point. So all you got to do is win out, Pittsburgh, against Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow. Good luck with that. Baltimore has that Houston game we've mentioned, and then Cleveland, who's clearly trying to lose at this point. So we have to assume maybe Baltimore does win out. If Pittsburgh loses, they drop to the 5. They might drop to the 6. We might get this matchup again as the 3-6, depending on how things go round 1 of the playoffs. So that'd be a fun one. Steelers, Ravens, you always know you're in for an interesting game.
Well, yeah, at this point, I think that's something I'm rooting for based off of how this one went. Tomlin looking for revenge is always going to be an interesting thing, especially in that scenario. All right, let's keep rolling here. We're going to go back to the Sunday slate. Tampa Bay at Dallas, Sunday Night Football. Dallas wins the game 26-24, covers his 4.5-point home dogs. Total goes over 49 barely in the final minutes. Some fun notes here just going overall. So the Buccaneers continue to just start hot in most of their games. They did trail early, but scored on their first drive. They had 8 touchdowns on their first drive, 10 scores on their first drive. So they've done really well this year under Baker, getting out of the gate. But the story of the first half to me was Tampa Bay not being able to finish drives even though they finished their first one. It was the difference. And there was a ton of points in the first half. We had 37 points, and then the game almost didn't go over. It was like 6 minutes left, throwing interceptions and fumbling all over the place, and people wondering if this is going to be a horrendous beat or not. Looking at Dallas, I think the one thing that was different was their defense was playing much better than they had been in the past. And that's kind of what ended up forcing Baker into an interception. There was a bunch of fumbles. There was a bunch of sacks. The thing that just continues to be an embarrassment with Dallas is the fact that their rush game is atrocious. They can't, in the first half, Turpin was their leader in rushing. And then basically by the end of the game, Dowdle has, almost no rushing yards at all, and they can't really find anything. And then you have Saquon and Henry and all these free agent running backs basically leading the league. Jacobs, too. So continues to be an issue for Dallas there. The only thing I will say about Tampa Bay is just stall after stall after stall. It was sacks and fumbles, especially coming out of the second half. Just no consistency, and that's kind of what did them in, because I really felt like at the end there they kind of got a little momentum, and then they just kind of gave it away again. In terms of the division, though, so Tampa Bay really needs Atlanta to lose again to get back in. So the schedule for Tampa Bay, Carolina at Tampa, New Orleans at Tampa. So that's it for them. Atlanta's at Washington, which to me is probably the game that Tampa needs for them to drop, because Carolina at Atlanta in Week 18. I mean, maybe Bryce and them fight, but Bryce at Penix, that would be a fun one, especially with Atlanta needing it. Yeah, what do you got here? Anything?
Yeah, that Penix game just got flexed to Sunday night too. So that's the one that we'll be talking about leading into the show a week from right now. So that'll be a fun one. We got the two rookies, Penix and Jane Daniels, and then Penix and effectively the rookie Bryce Young in the finale. Carolina controls the destiny of this division. Carolina plays both these teams the next 2 weeks, and we just talked about how well the Panthers are playing right now. So that will be pretty interesting. Panthers can't win the division, but they might be able to directly determine who will instead.
That Atlanta-Washington game, too, is interesting. So next week, Washington is a 5-point favorite against Penix in that one, which would be, you're right. That is a great Sunday night football game. Just kind of interesting storylines, especially off of last week. All right, so we're going to go quick here. We're going to go Tennessee and Indy first. Indy holds on absolutely barely, 38-30, covering the 4-point spread. Total goes over 43. For anyone like watching this game for the majority of the time and being like, oh my God, it's over, and then seeing the score, this one was a shocker to tune back into. From like a historical perspective, Titans 2-13 against the spread now this season. That is tied for the worst mark for any team against the spread in the Super Bowl era. And one just note on Jonathan Taylor. So 29 of 218 and 3 touchdowns. Only Mostert and Le'Veon Bell have done that in the last decade. So an absolute monster day for him, which, basically got them the win after all the points they allowed.
Yeah, we all saw what happened with Taylor last week, right? He's going in for the touchdown to probably get the big win in Denver, drops the ball just at the goal line, being an idiot. Like, we all know that's what happened. I have to be honest, I kind of thought emotionally that this team might roll over after that. You gave that game away. That was basically a playoff game. Instead, they came into the opposite here. It's 38-7 before garbage time. Tennessee got 3 touchdowns in garbage time, but up until that point, 38-7, Tennessee had 111 yards. The Colts demolished them. Will Levis got benched for Mason Rudolph. It's like he was never benched. Mason Rudolph threw 3 interceptions. Will Levis can throw 3 interceptions. I don't know what's happening with that. The Colts, on the other hand, I don't know. I was like, well, can Anthony Richardson show up for a big game? Well, you know how you get Anthony Richardson to show up for a big game? Don't have him pass the ball. He only had 7 completions in this game. The Colts were just like, you know what? What if we just only run? Jonathan Taylor just ran all game long. They called 48 rushes and 14 passes all game. Because why bother calling a pass when every run is working against what had been a pretty good Titans run defense and did not show up today? So I thought the Colts were pretty impressive. To me, the takeaway is the 38-7, not the 38-30. I know the whole thing counts, but I think that was mostly garbage time. This Colts defense has quietly played pretty well, and we'll be coming back to them in the hot read later.
Yeah, I don't even know what Tennessee does, because right now they're slated for the 4th pick. There's not 4 quarterbacks, I don't believe, in this draft, and you don't have one on your roster. So that is a decision for the future there. All right, Rams and Jets. Rams beat the Jets 19-9 in New York. Rams cover the 3-point spread on the road. Total goes under 47. I mean, Rams are 5-1 in the last 6 games after starting the year 1-4. They're on their way to potentially winning the division after a 1-4 start, which is really impressive. I believe, last decade, 2 teams that started 1-4 and won the division: 2020 Washington and 2015 Texans. And one note for next week, and I wanted to add this before tossing it to you. So Rodgers threw his 499th touchdown pass this week to Devontae Adams. It really also feels like he's forcing it to him, because it felt like he was doing it all game. I think he wants his 500 to go to him as well. So that will be something I will look for next weekend.
Yeah, that's a smart angle. I like that. This game stunk. This game was not fun. And I know, because the Rams were my side of the week, and we got it. We got the Rams. We got one of the alternate escalators as well. Did not deserve it. I'm not going to take credit for that. We'll take it. We'll take the win. This was an ugly game. I thought the Jets outplayed them. The underlying stats had them outplaying them. But in true Jets fashion, 3 turnovers on downs. They kicked a field goal on the 3. They missed a field goal. They lost a fumble. They're 2 of 5 on 4th down. Turnovers. Just the Jets season in a nutshell. And the Rams, on the meanwhile, have 19 points here against the Rams that they had to get too late, 13 points in the fourth quarter. This game was 6-6 at one point on 2 touchdowns. They both missed the extra point, which is just the Jets' stat that you possibly can have. But basically, the Rams have 6 points into the fourth quarter here against the Jets. Don't forget the last game where they played the Niners on a Thursday night and didn't get a touchdown in that game, and they scored 12. They won both of the games, and now they are basically in the driver's seat for the division. But I think we think of the Rams, I gave the cap of the Rams as this dominant offensive team. They have not been that in these 2 games. So do we credit them for having other ways to win and being able to scrap some things out like this? Or are they a little bit overrated? And I'll give you a spoiler alert. I don't think the Rams are as good as we're giving them credit for. I would be all over Cardinals, Saturday night Cardinals in LA for the Rams. That would have been my number 1 pick for the hot read. It's not, because I think the Rams are going to get the money. I think it's going to get to 6 or even towards 7. It's 5.5 most books right now. I don't need the Cardinals yet, but I can tell you there's a very good chance they'll be leading our picks when we get to them on the best bets next week, because I think the Cardinals, Kyler as an underdog has been very dangerous ATS for his career. Matt Stafford has not been great against other teams in this range, like 500 competitive sort of teams. I don't know, man. The Rams, maybe it's because I was stressing on this one because I had the big pick on the game for today. They're not impressing right now, and the Jets are not very good, and they barely get over the line. They frankly didn't deserve to here. So I'm not sure that the Rams have that playoff spot locked up just yet. I think we're going to get some drama still.
Yeah, unfortunately, Rams Cardinals is like the perfect spot next week where you have a team just eliminated. The other team absolutely needs it. Not only that, lines already moved 2 points, 3.5 to 5.5. And I assume, once everyone else looks at the standings and sees the big Z next to Arizona, they're going to be like, oh, we've got to take the Rams this week. So
yep.
I'm assuming that probably gets a little bit higher. I think you're right. It's a good spot. All right, let's keep going here. San Francisco, Miami. Miami wins the game 29-17 at home. They cover as 1.5 point underdogs as San Francisco ends up closing as a favorite on the road. Total goes over 44. The entire time watching this game, it just kind of looked like 2 teams that weren't making the playoffs. Like, legitimately back and forth. San Francisco had 11 penalties. They got outrushed by 80 yards. They had the only turnover of the game, which was a Purdy interception. But I don't necessarily think either team's defense looked fantastic and haven't for a little while. The real difference in the game was San Francisco scored 7 points in the second half. Missed field goal, touchdown, punt, interception, turnover on downs. The crazy one for me, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about it just quickly. The Niners are 2-13 second half ATS this year, 3-16 second half ATS last 19 games. Last year, fourth quarter ATS, they were 14-5, second best mark in the league. I assume, to me, it's all the injuries, but they just can't finish in the red zone. It's coming back to bite them.
Yeah, the red zone thing just keeps coming up and keeps coming up at some point. And it's not just this year. Like, that is a Shanahan bugaboo that has stayed with him for his career.
That's fair.
So I do think we're seeing that with some of these, like these fancy offensive coordinators, basically Shanahan, McDaniel, McVay, that they're manufacturing with more room on the field. They can do their thing. When it gets a little more condensed and those quarterbacks got to make a play, it doesn't work quite as well. So at some point, that becomes a pattern. Red zone is supposed to be mostly noise for the most part, but we got a lot of data on Shanahan at this point, and it's the same sort of thing year after year. I don't know about the second half thing, other than it just hasn't been the year in San Francisco. They just have so many injuries. It hasn't worked out for them. And I think, too, I would say I'm guilty of this as much as anyone. I think books and bettors haven't really caught up to just how much not the year it is for San Francisco. I think we continue to think like, oh, well, Debo's still out there and Kittle's still out there and like Purdy's playing pretty well. He is playing better, I think, than he had in previous years. We talked about that early. He's been more valuable to the Niners this year, which made him less valuable relative to the league because they don't want him being this valuable, but they have to. They had to make him valuable this game. I think they're like a 71% pass rate because they're down to like their 5th or 6th string running back. We finally made Kyle Shanahan not run the ball. There's nobody left to run the ball in San Francisco anymore. So, yeah, it's San Francisco plays next Monday night, home against Detroit. for the Lions, who need that game now to stay in their chase for the 1 seed. And don't forget who played San Francisco in the NFC Championship game last year and had it and then didn't have it anymore. And if I know Dan Campbell at all, I promise you, they've been waiting for this game on the calendar. And San Francisco is not as good as they have been. Detroit is definitely a spot I'll be looking hard at for next week, because that is a spot that I know the Lions will be excited to get back after what they gave up last year.
It's going to be hard to ignore, I think, the 2.5 on the first half, which it is right now as well, for Detroit. Just tying the bow on San Francisco, 9-12 in their last 21 games straight up. So, I mean, they just that's the team that they are right now. Even going back to last year, losing a few games, obviously down the stretch. And here from the AP, Shanahan 0-43 now in the regular season and playoffs when trailing by 8+ points in the fourth quarter. So the comeback stat, the get back into the game stat, we keep hearing over and over again, comes into play again today. All right, Giants at Falcons. Falcons win 34-7, covering as 9.5-point favorites on the close. Total under 43. Obviously, Penix, one of the largest lines ever for a quarterback in his first start. But going from the Giants' point of view, lost 10 in a row now. They are 1-9 ATS in those games. They are doing the tank very, very well, as they now have the number 1 overall pick.
Yeah, they are alone. We gave that one out on the preseason. Giants' worst record, 10-1. So they are controlling their destiny at this point. 2 losses away, no more tiebreakers to deal with. This line, if you just look at the score, you're going to be like, man, what a debut for Michael Penix. He was fine. He didn't make a lot of mistakes. He wasn't asked to do a whole lot. It's fine. You're playing the Giants. It's hard to get a cushier spot than a home game against a tanking worst team in the NFL this point in the season. I thought Penix was fine. He did have 1 interception. Clearly not his fault. He threw it to Kyle Pitts in the red zone, and Kyle Pitts stinks, so he just couldn't catch it and threw it up into the air to the defender, basically. No touchdowns yet for Penix. I thought he was okay. We're going to see in Sunday night on a national TV game in Washington, very different setting. Look, Washington's defense not great, but you still got Dan Quinn. You still got some actual guys trying on that side of the ball. And it's a road test versus a home game here. It's a real game against a playoff opponent versus basically a preseason game against the Giants. The final score here is basically turnovers. Giants turned over 3 times, 2 touchdowns for Atlanta's defense. So if you have them in fantasy this week as your defense streamer of the week, congrats. You're probably moving on from that one. Atlanta before this game was 31st in DVOA the last 6 weeks. So what do we do now? They were terrible. The only team worse than them was the Giants, who they just played. So did Michael Penix really change all that? Or is this just the Giants? We don't really know. We're going to find out some of that next Sunday night. Should be a good one.
Yeah, at least he got an appetizer, right? You couldn't make that first game Washington. That doesn't seem fair. So I do think him getting 4 quarters at least of some work in a real game will give him a little bit of a setup. All right, Detroit at Chicago. Detroit wins the game 34-17, covering as a 7-point road favorite. And I believe, if I look right, I believe the total goes over. Yeah, total goes over 47.5. So to me, it's been just the starting point for both of these teams. So Chicago now with Caleb Williams, 4-11 first half ATS, worst mark for any quarterback in the NFL. And Detroit on the other side, this is just continues to be the most ridiculous stat of 38-13-1 first half ATS last 3 seasons under Campbell. And I don't know if you're going to mention this, but it's just crazy. 9 losses without an interception this year. For Caleb Williams. So not turning it over in that sense, but 9 losses without a pick feels almost impossible.
Yeah, and honestly, Caleb, I didn't think was even too terrible in this game. 334 yards, 2 touchdowns. He ran the ball a little bit. The problem with the offense this game for Chicago is they couldn't run the ball to save their lives. They had 15 run plays for negative 0.8 EPA per play. That is the first percentile on rushing EPA. Against the Lions, who don't forget, are missing Lee McNeil, missing all the linebackers, most of the defensive line. To me, the only story for this game, other than the first half stat that you mentioned, is the trick play that you're going to see a highlight of if you haven't yet. The Lions were so unafraid of the Bears, they ran a trick play called Stumble Bum, quote unquote, that both Jared Goff and Jahmyr Gibbs faked falling down just to troll the Bears, just to leak out the tight end Laporta for the touchdown. You broke that one out up 2 scores on Chicago just because you're Ben Johnson, like taunting the Bears, like, hey, you want me? I just got an extra $5 million out of you on this play call. That was the only story from this game here.
Yeah, do you think he was like, I could save this for the NFC Championship game, but I might as well do it against the team who's going to want to hire me. Maybe I'll get a few extra $1 million out of it. That had to be what he was thinking. Because I saw it, they were up like 2 scores, and I was like, Chicago? Really? Like, you didn't wait for like a big game, but nonetheless. All right, New England at Buffalo. This was a little wild one. So Buffalo holds on here 24-21. They close as 14-point favorites. Total goes under 48. New England leads this game 14-0. Like, if you went to go get a slice of pizza after the 1 o'clock slate, you saw a 14-0 score, and you were pretty surprised there. So New England's first 2 drives, 22 plays, 150 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Up and down the field. Then they go punt, end of half, fumble, interception, fumble return for a touchdown, punt. Oh, and then a touchdown drive. So, I mean, what we learned here, which we seem to be learning every week, is Drake May shows promise. Drake May can do some things, and then Drake May is also a rookie. 7th straight game with an interception. From Buffalo's point of view, which is way more important, 13 penalties. Really, really not good. So, yes, they held on here. Yes, it's going to be a win in the standings. Josh seemed off in this one. He also hurt, I believe, his pinky/hand, which is definitely something to monitor going into the week. But the win is mostly about just keeping 1 seed pace. We talked about the fact they played the Jets next week. This is the biggest problem. Buffalo's defense, 29th in EPA per play since week 9. It's Jacksonville, Giants, Jets, Bills. That is not a list that they can afford to be on when it comes playoff time. So they just really need to definitely figure that out. And their pass success rate, dead last in the NFL since that week 9 mark. So to me, that is the biggest issue, that going forward, if we're going to see a Buffalo team that's going to try to make a run, they got to start stopping people.
Yeah, defense definitely needs to be better. And part of that, I like DVOA generally more than EPA and success rate because it takes opponent into play. They have played, they
Sure.
played the Rams. They played some of these good teams lately. So that is part of it there. That's not the Patriots. That is not what's happening in this game. This is Drake May on the road doing the thing. I think that I predict that we're going to have the forced MVP conversation this week of like, I don't know, Josh Allen, another interception, didn't have a good game. Look at his stats. Is it Lamar Jackson? Is it Saquon Barkley? Look at his big game. First of all, the Josh Allen interception this game was a positive EPA play. It was a 3rd and long. They gave the ball to the team on the 1-yard line. That's like the best arm punt you can possibly have in a game. Allen is the MVP if they win out. They're probably going to win out. It's Jets, Patriots. I know we have to talk about
fair,
something.
Though, that was on the player. It was on the cornerback, wasn't it? I mean, he caught it in the end zone. Like, if it would have went to the 20, that's what I was laughing about. It's just the other guy's dumb decision makes it a positive play for Allen. Understood. All right, let's keep going here. Cleveland at Cincinnati. Cincinnati wins the game 24-6. Cover is 10. They kept a 10-point spread. Total goes under 46. The stat before I hand it to you. Jamar Chase is now the leader for the Triple Crown. Receptions, receiving yards, receiving touchdowns. Entering the year, he was top 4 in odds in all 3 categories, so not too much of a shock. But the names to actually do this, Jerry Rice, Sterling Sharp, Steve Smith Sr., and Cooper Kupp. So any other thoughts here on Cleveland and Cincinnati?
Yeah, I mean, Chase was awesome, 100 yards almost, and a touchdown. Now he has a touchdown in 8 of 10 games with T. Higgins on the field, who also had a touchdown. Cool. That one was awesome from Joe Burrow, nearly on his knees, falling down, and still got the ball to T. 3 touchdowns for Burrow. All that said, not that impressive of a game. I mean, they won comfortably, but the Browns are just kind of tanking here with Dorian Thompson-Robinson. The note I had from this game, there's a fan that got to kick a field goal. Fan hits a 40-yard field goal, and he won pizza for the entire stadium at this game. That's what happens at Cleveland, Cincinnati. That's what it's about.
Yeah. Fantastic. Great for Cincinnati. But honestly, they're getting closer to at least a playoff, co-playoff, pre-playoff game. So the fact that they're still in it is pretty fantastic and ridiculous. All right, last game here. Jaguars, Raiders. Raiders win the game 19-14, covers 2-point favorites. 2-point favorites for the Raiders, but I guess someone has to be favored in the game. Total goes under 41.5. Notes are quick here. Brian Thomas Jr. is awesome. Just truly fantastic in some of the things that you saw him do in this game. Obviously, the Jacksonville job is Bigsby over ETN. You continue to see that week in and week out. Even with the fumble, they trust him. And I feel like this one's worth noting, as since going 10-8 ATS in his rookie year, Mac Jones now 8-21-1 ATS since that season. Worst mark in the NFL of any quarterback. From the Raiders' point of view, it's just Brock Bowers. 11 receptions for 99 yards. He now has the second most receiving yards in NFL history by a tight end in their rookie season. Most since Mike Ditka in 61. That is pretty much the news. I mean, you continue to watch Bowers. He's not going to win Rookie of the Year because Jaden Daniels is at, I think, minus 20,000 at the moment. So that market is over. But truthfully, any other year, I think Bowers actually gets some serious look here. But nothing else to say.
I would add one thing. I would fire Antonio Pierce for this win. This is a franchise crippling win for Antonio Pierce
Takes
and
you
the
to
Raiders.
The sixth
He dropped
spot.
to number
They're
5.
in the 6th spot now.
Yeah,
5 or 6. I saw in Tankathon they're at 6. Honestly, I that was in my notes as well. This is the type of loss that for a franchise that absolutely needs a quarterback, this just cannot happen. Like, good on Doug Peterson for Jaguars look like they're number 3 right now. He should get a raise. All right, let's go to Monday Night Football. It is honestly, I can't even believe this is Monday Night Football, but it's Saints at Packers right now. It is a 14.5-point spread. This was actually, if I look back, it was as low as about 12.5. So this has gone up 2 full points at 14.5 now. I mean, the last time we even had a 14-point favorite on Monday Night Football was back in 2020. It was Ben Roethlisberger and Ryan Finley. So it has been a minute. And New Orleans' biggest dog in any game since about 1999, if not later or earlier, based off of where this closes. 2 bets I just wanted to throw out before I get your opinion here. Just some fun anytime touchdown I thought was Kraft and Rattler. So Kraft has scored in 4 of his last 8, and at plus 250, there's a little value there. But mostly New Orleans does struggle versus tight ends from a DVOA perspective. And Kraft is one of the more targeted tight ends for Green Bay in the red zone, 11 of 15 in terms of targets there. So he has done a very good job. And Rattler, a little surprising, 9 of 61 rushing in this game so far. He had a rushing touchdown actually in the preseason. I just think he's going to be under pressure. They're going to be trailing, and he's going to just try to make a play at some point in this game. And at 10-1, it is worth a shot. What do you think about this game?
I think this game stinks. I think this is one of the worst games we could possibly have to watch. I think you should not bet this game. I think you should go get some last-minute Christmas shopping done. You should wrap your presents. You should hang out with the family. You should travel. No Derek Carr, no Alvin Kamara, no Chris Olave, no Taysom Hill. I think, by the way, the Packers are the number 1 team by DVOA over the last 6 weeks. So in case the Saints aren't missing enough, the Packers are balling right now. That said, my numbers can't get there on the Packers being this big of a favorite, so I can't get that excited to bet it either. It's a look-ahead spot. Green Bay's got the big Minnesota game next week. Green Bay can still move up ahead of Minnesota, and they've got a short week ahead. So the Saints have been way better this season in the first half than the second half. They're a top 10 team season long in the first half. They're terrible in the second half. Saints are 9-5 ATS first half. They're 5-9 ATS in the second half. The Packers are 9-5 in the second half ATS. I don't know that the Packers put this game away early. If you must bet this game and don't want to just take one of the touchdown long shots, give me the Packers second half ATS. We did this with the Bills, the big favorite game. We saw them kind of on the look-ahead spot, come out a little slow. You talked about the Patriots lead. Packers second half is a -6.5. We're getting under the key number there. I think that's a mistake. I think this line should be a 7.5. With Buffalo, we kind of coasted to an easy second half cover. So if you want it, Packers second half. But please find something better to do with your Monday night.
I was even going to talk about the fact that it's plus 315 first quarter money line for the Saints and plus 455 first half money line. I mean, if you were trying to go crazy and wanted to get an early taste and you thought they could stay in the game, those felt interesting. I don't even know what it is right now because I was attempting to look it up, but a New Orleans halftime, Green Bay full time. Would just be something fun to potentially have in your back pocket. But aside from that, you're right. You can't be serious about this game whatsoever. All right, let's get into your hot read. So let's talk about Week 17. 2 weeks ago in the regular season, this is times where Bet Labs and all these different tools we have kind of light up because there's lots of different scenarios and things to make this really fun. So what are your thoughts on Week 17?
Yeah, I'm looking very much at the AFC wildcard race for my picks here. So let's start with Saturday, the early game. Give me the Chargers, minus 4.5 in New England. There's one book out there still laying 4.5. The others are 5.5, so it's already moving up. Kind of in no man's land, not a huge key number there, obviously. I'm not all that impressed by the Patriots today. They go up 14-0, like you said. I think that's just the Bills kind of coming out flat a little bit. Patriots still lose by 10 if they don't get a garbage touchdown late. I think that's sort of buying some time on this line here a little bit. The Chargers still need this win. They got to win to clinch the playoffs. They want to win to improve their seeding. They could be the 5, 6, 7 seed. That matters in the AFC. You want the 5, you get to play Houston. I'd way rather play Houston. You fall to the 7 seed, you might be playing the Bills. You don't want the Bills. You definitely want to move up in the standings here, and especially with Denver playing a tough schedule down the stretch, it's a good spot for the Chargers to possibly move up. Baltimore, tough schedule. They could possibly have lost already by then. Give the Chargers another chance to move up there. The Chargers are playing on long rest here. Don't forget, they had the Thursday night game against Denver. The Patriots are going to be on a short rest because it's a Saturday game with a rookie quarterback and a rookie coach, who, by the way, Gerard Mayo got the dreaded vote of confidence, which I don't know, man. I don't want the vote of confidence for my rookie coach. What do you think this team was going to do? I don't think that they're looking that great. This coaching setup for a long week with Jim Harbaugh, I think is a huge coaching advantage here. Harbaugh in Bet Labs, I looked this up. He is 64% ATS career as a favorite in the NFL. That's the best of any coach we have in Bet Labs that has at least 15 games as a favorite, including when he's favored by 6 or less, 26-7 ATS, 79% hit rate, nearly invincible. I'm not sure this will qualify because I think this line could possibly get past that margin by the time we get there, but we're taking it at 4.5. Also, Jesse Minter, defensive coach for the Chargers, I think is another big advantage. One of the best assistants in the league. He's going to be in the running for that assistant award. Extra time to prep for a rookie quarterback with all those kind of confusing fronts and everything that Minter defense throws. We just saw it against Bo Nix. We saw how that got caught up to him in the second half. I like that here. Patriots can't run the ball. The defense, I think, is there for the taking. If this line moves up later in the week, I wouldn't mind pivoting to just a first half play. Chargers are 10-5 ATS first half, Patriots 5-10. But that kind of sets up for the full game, too. Chargers, what they do this season, they get the lead, they sit on it, they milk the clock out from there. So I like Chargers. I actually, by my numbers, make them almost 8-point favorites here. So getting a lot of value, totally on their side of the key. So Chargers minus 4.5. My second hot read, I'm going with a teaser. You know I love my just win baby teasers. So staying in the AFC wildcard race, give me the Colts, give me the Dolphins, and more importantly, give me the teams they're playing against. So Colts minus 7.5 at the Giants. We're going to tease that down to 1.5, basically just win, please not by 1 point. And the Dolphins minus 6 at the Browns. We'll tease that down to a pick'em. Now look, you kind of mentioned this as we talked about the Cardinals-Rams situation. It's dangerous betting on these teams in must-win situations. I know you're going to have trends about that in your article coming up. Here's one that I have. From week 16 forward, teams that have won 40 to 60% of their games, facing a team 8 to 25% worse. Those teams are 32, 74, and 5 ATS. 30%. We just saw the Bucs Sunday night in that spot lose outright to Dallas. These lines get inflated. I think the lines are a touch high already. If you want ATS, I think you got to bet the Giants or the Browns. I don't want to bet the Giants or the Browns, so I'm teasing instead to just get the win. So why the case for the wins? I don't know if I really need to make too much of it. I don't know if I trust Anthony Richardson on the road, but I do trust the 2-13 Giants to lose, which is all I'm really asking them to do here is just lose, baby. They control their destiny for the 1 seed. Again, the Colts were up 38-7. I trust the Colts defense against Drew Lock, against that defense, against the offense, I should say, of the Giants. They held the Titans to 111 yards before garbage time there. I don't need Richardson throwing passes. The Colts have made it clear they don't need him either. Just run the ball. Jonathan Taylor, get the job done there. I trust the Colts defense and run game. Dolphins have, I think, been in like 3 or 4 teasers for me. They might be my teaser team of the season. I think that's because they're not what we wanted them to be. They're kind of fine, though. They're not terrible, and not terrible beats the Browns because the Browns are starting the terrible Dorian Thompson-Robinson, which to me is just like a shouting sign. We are done winning this season. We would like a high draft pick, please. And I think they're well on their way there. Miami's run defense has been good, so it's only on the passing on Cleveland. Dorian Thompson-Robinson is not a passing NFL quarterback. The Browns' defense has fallen off. I think the Dolphins can find enough there. So I'll make the counter argument here. I'm taking the Dolphins and the Colts on the road in cold, gross environments. Do I feel good about Richardson and Tua there? No, I do not. Here's what I feel good about. I'm taking Drew Lock and DTR to lose games. I feel good about that. These franchises are broadcasting to us, we want to lose the game. We are trying to tank and lose the game. So just win, baby. Colts -1.5 on the teaser. Dolphins down to a pick 'em. Just get it over the line. Don't pay attention. Don't watch. It's going to be ugly. We won't have any notes next week. Just win. Colts Dolphins teaser.
Yeah, to your point though, so Tua 5-6 ATS this year, but he's 8-2 in a 6-point tease, which kind of says to your point. And even looking at the forecast for this weekend, 47 degrees in Cleveland, might be some wind, might be some rain, but 47 degrees. So I think Tua can handle 47 degrees. All right, that has been the Action Network podcast recap episode for Week 16. Got all the bets, went through all the games. We will be back here on Thursday for the Best Bets episode. We will also be back here on Sunday night to recap everything that happened in Week 17. 2 weeks to go in this beautiful NFL regular season. Definitely stay with us for all our coverage and check out actionnetwork.com and the Action Network app. I am Evan Abrams. That is Brandon Anderson, and we will see you soon, fellas.